Hello my dear student, welcome to the online classes of Balangir Public School. Today in this video we will continue the chapter life process, and in this video I will cover the topic respiration and nutrition in human beings. So without wasting much time, let's get started. Today we will learn about nutrition in human beings. A very specific and complex system of nutrition is developed in human beings. A digestive system is the part of the body through which nutrition takes place. It consists of an alimentary canal and the associated gland like salivary gland, liver, pancreas and gallbladder. So here the first question arises, what is an alimentary canal? So, alimentary canal is a tubular passage extending from mouth to anus through which food passes during its digestion and absorption. It consists of mouth, buccal cavity, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine and anus. So first is mouth. What is mouth? It is the opening from which food is consumed. It leads to the buccal or the oral cavity, which is a number of teeth, a muscular tongue and a salivary gland. So the buccal cavity is divided into two parts, that is teeth and tongue. Teeth, the first step of the digestion, involve the mechanical breakdown of the food into the small pieces with the help of teeth by cutting and crushing the food to prepare it from the swallowing and digesting. And second is your tongue. It is a freely movable muscular organ attached to the floor of the buccal cavity, and it helps in the mixing of the food with the saliva and then help in the pushing food to the pharynx and the esophagus. So after the buccal cavity, the food enters through a tube-like structure called as your esophagus. As I have mentioned here that the oral cavity has consist of teeth, muscular tongue and salivary gland. So what do you mean by salivary gland? So salivary gland help in the production of saliva, a watery secretion that contain 98% of water and many other constituents like mucus, salivary amylase, etc. The saliva contain an enzyme called salivary amylase that break down starch, which is a complex molecule, to give a simple sugar. Next is your esophagus, which is also known as the food pipe. It is a muscular tube through which the food passes from mouth to the stomach by a process called peristalsis. In your book, it is mentioned a peristaltic movement. So what do you mean by peristalsis? It is an automatic movement of the food due to the contraction of the muscle in the food pipe. After the esophagus, the food enters to stomach. Stomach is a J-shaped elastic sac that expands when it receives the food. The breakdown of the food occurs in two ways in stomach. First is the physical breakdown and second is your chemical breakdown. In physical breakdown, as the food enters the stomach, the muscular contraction of the wall of the stomach mix and churn the food with the gastric juice. This action further break down the food particle into small pieces. Second is your chemical breakdown. In chemical breakdown, the gastric gland in the stomach secrete the enzyme pepsin, HCl, that is hydrochloric acid, and mucus. So these are the three chemicals or enzymes which help in the digestion of food. First one is a pepsin. Pepsin help in the breakdown of the protein into smaller units. Second is HCl, that is hydrochloric acid, provide an acidic medium for the digestion of enzyme to be active and kill the harmful microorganisms that might have seen or enter in your body swallowed along with the food. And third one is your mucus. Mucus play an important role in the lubrication and protect the inner lining of the stomach from the action of the acid. So what are the function of stomach? It helps in the temporary storage of food. It softens the food with the help of gastric juice. The germs are killed and the food is disinfected, and the food is properly digested in stomach. So these are the function of stomach. The stomach releases the food into the first segment of small intestine. This is the diagram of your small intestine, which is divided into three different parts, that is duodenum, jejunum and ileum. Small intestine is the longest part of the alimentary canal. The length depends upon the feeding habit being longer in the herbivores as compared to the carnivores. For example, herbivores eating grass have a longer small intestine, which help in the digestion of the heart to digest cellulose. Hence, the longer small intestine ensure that the food stay for a longer duration in the small intestine, and also harbors many bacteria that process and break down cellulose. On the other hand, the small intestine of carnivores like tiger have a shorter intestine, as the digestion takes place easily and quickly, as meat is easier to digest. The small intestine is the site of the complete digestion of carbohydrates, protein and fats. The semi-fluid mass of partly digested food is expelled by the stomach into the first part of small intestine, that is duodenum, which receive the secretion from the liver, that is bile juice, and from the pancreas, that is pancreatic juice. The food coming from the stomach is acidic and has to be made alkaline for the action of the enzyme present in the pancreatic juice and intestinal juice. So the bile juice also helps in the breaking down of the fat molecule into smaller globules and increase the efficiency of the enzyme action. So what is emulsification of fat? As the liver secrete bile juice to convert the large fat molecule into smaller unit, is known as the emulsification of fat. There are numerous digestive glands present on the wall of the small intestine, which secrete the intestinal juice. The enzyme present in the intestinal juice convert carbohydrate into glucose, fat into fatty acid, and glycerol and protein into amino acid. Therefore, the small intestine is considered the site of complete digestion of carbohydrate, fat, and protein. The wall of the small intestine contains numerous finger-like projections called villi, which increase the surface area for the absorption of digested food. They contain blood vessels that absorb the digested food and transport it to the whole body. The breakdown of the macromolecule to the simpler substance occur in the duodenum of the small intestine, and the simple substance thus formed and absorbed in the jejunum and ileum of the small intestine. After the small intestine, the food molecule enter to the large intestine. The undigested and unabsorbed substance are passed onto the large intestine from the small intestine. The water and the salt from the indigestible food matter are absorbed by the wall of the large intestine called as your colon. So in large intestine, it only absorbs water and minerals. As a result, the waste material are formed that are temporarily stored in the rectum till defecation through the anus. The exit of this waste material through anus is controlled by a muscle located at the end of the digestive tract called as your anal sphincter. Here we have completed the part nutrition in human beings. As we have already completed the part nutrition, now we will learn about respiration. All of us need energy for carrying out our day-to-day life activities. The energy required for carrying out of all such activities is obtained by breaking the high energy chemical compound of macromolecules. This process of breaking the chemical bond of complex molecule within the cell, leading to the considerable release of energy, is called respiration. The respiration process can be divided into different categories based on the availability of the oxygen. However, in all types of respiration, the first step is the breakdown of glucose, a 6-carbon molecule, into a 3-carbon molecule called as your pyruvate. This process takes place in cytoplasm. Further, the fate of the pyruvate depends on the availability of the oxygen. Some use oxygen to break down glucose completely into the carbon dioxide and water, and some use the pathway that do not involve the oxygen. The kind of respiration which takes place in the presence of oxygen is called as aerobic respiration, and the process that takes place in the absence of oxygen is called as anaerobic respiration. The release of the energy in this aerobic process is a lot greater than the anaerobic process. Sometimes when there is a lack of oxygen in our muscle cell, another pathway for the breakdown of the pyruvate is taken. Here, the pyruvate is converted into the lactic acid, which is also a 3-carbon molecule. This build-up of lactic acid in our muscle during the sudden activity causes cramp. So these are the 3 pathways help in the breakdown of glucose. First one is your absence of oxygen, that is anaerobic respiration. Second is your presence of oxygen, that is aerobic respiration. And third one is your lack of oxygen, which held on the muscle cell. In aerobic respiration, there is a breakdown of the pyruvate into 3 carbon molecule plus energy into carbon dioxide and water, and as end product and release the energy. It occurs in the mitochondria. This type of respiration is most common in the higher organism. In anaerobic respiration, sugar is only partially oxidized, and instead of being oxidized to the carbon dioxide and water, and it is converted into either ethanol or lactic acid. However, the amount of the energy released is less in both the lactic acid and alcoholic fermentation as compared to the aerobic respiration. The energy released after the breaking of the organic molecule cannot be used directly but is trapped and stored in ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate molecule, which store energy in their phosphate bond. This energy-rich phosphate bond are broken down whenever and wherever energy need to be utilized. Since the aerobic respiration pathway depend on oxygen and anaerobic respiration do not require oxygen, we have seen that the plant exchanges the gases through stomach of the plant, which is also called as the stomata, and the large intercellular space ensure that all the cells are in the contact with air. Carbon dioxide and oxygen are exchanged by diffusion here. Plant use aerobic respiration to release the energy from the food. Hence, the plant requires oxygen for the respiration and give out carbon dioxide. They do not have specialized organ for the gaseous exchange, but they have stomata which are present on the leaves and lenticle which are present in the stomach. For this purpose, each plant part take care of its own gaseous exchange need. Root, stem and leaves of the plant exchange gases for the respiration separately. The gases move entirely by the process of diffusion. In unicellular organism like amoeba, paramecium, respiration takes place through direct diffusion. And in multicellular organism, respiratory organ like gills, lungs and skill help in the respiration. In case of fish and snail, their respiratory organ is gill. In case of amphibians, reptiles, bird and mammals, their respiratory organ is lungs. And in case of frog and earthworm, their respiratory organ is gill. They respire through their skin. In human beings, air is taken into the body through the nostril. The air passing through the nostril is filtered by the fin hairs that line the passage. The human respiratory system consists of nostril, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, lungs, and diaphragm. Nostril is the external opening through which air enters into the body. Nasal cavity, it helps in the sense of smell. So the air is first inhaled from a pair of nostrils which open out above the upper lips. In the middle portion of the nasal cavity, the air is moistened and warmed. Air then passes through a straight tube called the trachea, which divides into right and left primary bronchi, and it then entered the lungs. In the lungs, the bronchi divided repeatedly to form secondary and tertiary bronchi, and finally into very thin terminal tube called bronchioles. The trachea, the primary, secondary and tertiary bronchi and initial bronchioles are supported by incomplete cartilaginous ring which prevent the air passage from collapse. Each terminal bronchiole gives rise to a number of balloon-like structures called as your alveoli, which are moist and very thin wall having a lot of tiny blood vessels through which the gases are exchanged. The process of breathing in occurs by the contraction of the diaphragm and the contraction of the muscle between the ribs. The inhaled oxygen diffuses from the alveoli to the blood capillaries surrounding the alveoli for the transportation to all the cells of the body, whereas the blood from the rest of the body containing carbon dioxide is brought from released into the alveoli, expelling during breathing out or exhalation. Therefore, the alveoli are the primary site of the gaseous exchange. In case of human being, the respiratory pigment is hemoglobin, which has a very high affinity for oxygen. This pigment is present in the red blood corpuscle. A small animal, no separate system of transport is needed as the exchange of gases are directly by the process of diffusion. On the other hand, the large animal cannot maintain the gaseous exchange simply by diffusion. So, in human beings, transport is fully developed.